Time for Ask the Mayor on KWBE with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. Another chilly morning, and I keep thinking we're going to wake up someday, start this show, and there'll be snow on the ground, but it hasn't happened yet. What's the deal?
It hasn't happened, and by the way, good morning.
Morning.
I think early in the week there was snow in the forecast, I think, for Friday, Saturday, and it looks like that's going to be rain.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good thing for everybody. But it is definitely cold.
Yeah.
We've had a few cold mornings. Finally broke out the real winter coat when I took the dog for a walk this morning.
And then we get some 50s thrown in there once in a while, and you get the clubs back out or whatever, or do outdoor stuff.
Well, yeah, I think Sunday's supposed to be up to 52.
Yeah.
But talk about a blessing. The town was busy on Saturday, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we had the grandkids, so we made the rounds to several events, including the Humane Society, and had a great ride in a fire truck with Santa and Nate Cook, and there was a lot of people that did that. The parade had a really, really good attending, and tourism travel and the Beatrice Chamber of Commerce did a very nice job there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the Beatrice Community Hospital sponsored reindeer. Mm-hmm. And I think
they've done that for several years now.
They have, and I think, did I hear that it took, people started lining up to see the reindeer a half an hour before. It
was still light, and then there was a big line going down 5th Street there and around. Yeah, that's a popular thing.
It was a good weekend for everybody, and kind of a good weekend for me, being able to see Christmas from the eyes of a 8-year-old, 7-year-old, and 9-year-old. We had all three of them, so it was fun.
And on top of that, didn't you judge?
I did.
Great entries?
I did.
Yeah. Pretty competitive.
It was very competitive. I thought, there's 25 floats, and I will tell you that I think everybody did a really nice job.
Yeah.
And so I don't know who the winner was. We just hand in our rating sheets and they take it from there.
I had the winners announced earlier this week, but now I forget who they are. So I'm I need to have the sheet in front of me. But anyway, there were some really nice entries.
There was.
And actually, the city gets involved in that quite a bit too. Between the street department, electric department, and you have some entries in there too. Fire trucks.
Yeah, and they were done very, very well.
Yeah.
I think they kind of get into it, and it's a little bit of a change of pace. And as I look at it, a lot of the floats, it's really hard to compare Homestead Days Parade and the Lighted Parade, but I felt like this year there was probably a lot of labor put into the light parade, and I'm sure you got to figure a lot of things out of how do you make your lights work and those type of things. So it went really well.
One thing I noticed the police department did, and just my opinion on it, I thought it worked out really well. They used to just block off traffic right at 5th Street, but this year they went to 6th and then 4th and kept the traffic from coming in, so you didn't have those people that maybe didn't know a parade was going on, and I think it was a little bit safer situation.
I think it was. I think it was a great plan.
Yeah.
I think it worked out really well. Before the parade, I did see somebody going the wrong way from 4th up to 5th, but they got them.
That's usually a daily thing.
They got them turned around and headed back the other way. But that's the other thing you have to think about between the chamber and the tourism director and the police department. There's a lot of additional labor that goes into having that parade, and it's really well worth it. It was really well done.
So a lot of those logistics things that the public doesn't see that you have to do in preparation.
Absolutely.
But it was a good parade, nice lights downtown, everything. Charles Park all lit up, looks nice with the candy cane aisle there and then the trees and everything. Yep. And I get to see that every morning when I drive to work.
That's right.
Circle around there, so that's pretty neat. Might talk just a little bit about, eventually it will be snow removal season when it comes up. And I know one thing people can help out with during the winter, although it's kind of hard to do it because you have to park somewhere, but if you can kind of keep your vehicles moved now and then so you stay out of the way of plows and things like that. So.
Right. When you have the heavy snows, certainly a lot of times if it's a really bad storm, we'll declare a snow emergency where there's no parking on the emergency routes. Yeah. The other side of it is when they go down one side, a lot of times then it's an opportunity to move your vehicle to the other side. Mm-hmm. For the most part, during the entire year, we don't really worry about, I guess, the overnight parking or if you park someplace more than 24 hours. However, it becomes very evident when you have a snow plow and the car hasn't been moved for a week, and then at that point in time, we try really hard to kind of maybe contact the person, but at some point in time, every once in a while we have to issue a ticket just because it kind of messes up that entire street.
And if you can move it once in a while, it actually does you a lot of good, because if your vehicle ever gets plowed in a couple of times, that's pretty hard to dig out of. I remember last year there were a few vehicles around town where the snow was, up to the driver's windows and things, and it makes it a lot tougher to move it after that.
We had a lot of snow last year, and I think you see it, it's kind of in the movies, and I remember as a kid, and I remember even now, I get up pretty early and get my driveway all done, and they got to do their job. Here comes the snowplow, and then you get to move the stuff that happens in your driveway, and even the mayor, he has to do that as well. But you know what? If you get to it right away, it's great. But if you don't and it freezes, it's a lot harder to get out of there.
Better to attack it when it's powder, because when it becomes ice chunks, it's hard. That is a big chore there. So, and I know the kind of probably fight the issue of sidewalk clearing, but that's. Sometimes there's just so much snow you can't do a lot with that. But if you can get out there, maybe have a lawn service or somebody do it.
There's a number of options, to get all that done. I think for the most part, everybody does really a good job, and I think having lived in a number of communities, I will tell you that the snow removal in Beatrice is actually phenomenal. I know that when we lived in Lincoln, there was a period of time that you didn't know if you were going to get your side streets even cleaned, because I believe they hire that done and outsource it, and I think it has to be 4 or 5 inches, or Lincoln has a rule of how much snow it has to, and I think we typically start scooping snow or moving snow after about 2 to 2.5 inches, maybe 3, because it just is a lot easier to get it off than trying to not.
Well, I did see. You can see the telltale tracks that the de-icer city trucks have on occasion put it on bridges and things like that to sort of keep it from freezing up. I really haven't needed it too much lately, but they're out there looking at it.
And I think sometimes when you see those, you think, oh my gosh, is there a snowstorm coming? That's not necessarily always the case. A lot of times it's just that the temperature and the moisture and the dew points are going to be at the right point. And Jason's been doing this a long time, and he knows that information. That's why you'll see those lines, particularly on bridges and some of the places where we know it's going to get slick. So again, it's one of those things that it's just preventative rather than reactive.
Well, and if you look at it recently, when we've had this going back and forth between highs in the 30s or highs in the 50s, the asphalt streets have been kind of sweating that moisture up, and so that can freeze overnight, and there you go.
It can.
Get some slick stuff there. Yesterday, I did not make it, but Board of Public Works held a meeting. I think he held it at a different location. It was at the fire station.
It was at the fire station. Reason it's at the fire station is our auditors are in town for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We can talk a little bit about that later.
Sure.
But, Board of Public Works met. I think it's their last meeting of this year as we start winding down 2024, which is hard to believe. But it was mainly just approving some bills to be paid and getting some updates from all the department heads that are in the Beatrice Board of Public Works.
Anything stand out from the department reports as far as what electric, water, sewer, everything's being done? Or?
Well, number one, they're all continuing to move forward. I think if you look at the water department, I think they've gone through and tested a lot of the fire hydrants, which is one of those things that they can kind of do. Street department, of course, is gearing up for the snowstorm and finished, probably this cold weather finished any of the more crack and seal fills, but you saw them out. Electric company continues to run pretty well. I think they're rebuilding one line that they know that needs to be rebuilt. I don't remember exactly the location. And then I think one of the things that people probably are wondering about, I think there's been several meetings, and we continue to work on Paddock, Lane, and Lincoln properties, as I believe some of the design in those areas are about 30% complete on how to move those into residential housing lots.
Yeah. As far as the actual utility construction or extensions and things like that, is that something for next year, or how does that
Right. Those are things we're looking at in 2025. I mean, I think we'd like to move forward as quickly as we can to see if we can find some builders that want to build a house, or somebody who would like to build a house in that those two neighborhoods. It's going to take some time. I mean, one of the things that I think imagines people once you get the streets and the electricity in, that all of a sudden in 2 years you're going to have 40 houses built, and that doesn't work that way. Because it takes maybe 10 years to fill those out, but it does give the city a great opportunity to have some really quality housing at, I guess as we say, somewhat moderate rate, but I think you're looking at $250,000 to $350,000. That wasn't moderate when you and I were growing up, but that's kind of the moderate rate
changed,
right now.
Yeah. As far as developers that were showing early interest, have you met with any that say, hey, I wouldn't, mind doing at least a part of this, or Paddock Lane or Lincoln, or have you had any contact to this point, or is it too early?
I think most of the interest has been in lots, not necessarily being part of the development. I think the development will probably fall a little bit onto the city to try to get that project done, because that's a huge undertaking for a lot of the developers, and I don't think we have enough developers with that strong of a backing and interest to do it.
Now, most of the attention's been on Lincoln, Paddock Lane, Stoddard with the Hoppy development there. But anything new regarding Cedar, the former Cedar School, or where it used to be the pre-kindergarten?
No, again, I think we're going to be very cautious in what we do with Cedar property. I think we want to see how well the development at Lincoln and Paddock work, and then try to figure out what is the best plan for Cedar. One of the things we don't want to do is move too quickly and then make a choice that we have to that we would regret later.
Okay. Back with more on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan, 15 minutes before 9 o'clock here. You mentioned that auditors are doing their work in this busy time. Well, it's always a busy time for the finance department. It seems like you get done with one and you're right back into the next auditing period and examination of everything.
Yes.
Talk about that work that goes on.
Well, it happens every year, and they usually come in, early December, maybe a little bit of November, and they go over everything. They look at different transactions. They look at our financial policies. They spend a lot of time with Hannah, and I think over the past 20 or 25 years, we've done really, really well with our audits. I think our finance department is very well documented, and the procedures that they follow are pretty. They're financially sound. I think one of the things that is also important to remember is that once the audit report gets done, they'll come back in, February, March, April, depending on their time frame, because it takes a while to really do a full analysis of all the data that they gathered while they were here. And then they'll meet and tell us, again, how we did. And I think the audit report is also then always posted on our website as part of our financial transparency.
It's a detailed process. Is there any way to streamline it over time when you get used to doing it? Or it's just you have to plow through the data and you have to, it just takes a lot of time?
I think if nothing more, safeguarding of the city finances, it's just going to take some time.
Yeah.
You just never know what might be discovered. They also are great about giving us advice about, hey, you know what, you're doing great, but think about this, or think about this cash handling, or a number of pieces of advice that really help us. So Hannah, as our finance director, does a great job. Tobias does a great job from policy procedures perspective, from a financial standpoint. We're in a good, strong financial position. All those things help as they go through the auditing process.
As you've looked at the reports that are eventually given to you and the council once the process plays out, I don't really remember any serious shortcomings in years past. It seems like things go pretty well. Like you mentioned, they make some recommendations for adjustments, but can you think of any time when you really had a serious problem that you really had to correct immediately?
No, not at least in the I guess it's 10 years that I've been involved in this process. No, I have not seen anything like that. And, I think one of the things that it also helps us take our time to evaluate, whether it's the BPW or the city, I think, at least for me, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make sure that we have, I think it's important that we make s what's the word I'm looking for? I had it just off the top of my head.
Transparency?
Well, transparency is one thing, but also reserves.
Okay.
I think that's one of the things that's important, that each department has at least some benchmark reserves when we walk away from the end of a year. There could be some type of catastrophic loss that happens. It's always better to be in a position where we have the cash than trying to figure out how to drum the cash up. Yeah. And so I think as we look at the audit report and we look at year-end balances, I think it's always important to remember, industry-wise, what is really a good, safe cash reserve for the electric company or Board of Public, the WPC. What are those benchmarks so that we have money in like an emergency fund or a savings account?
Yeah.
It's just financial. It's just a great financial place to be.
And if you can avoid all polar vortexes.
Well,
that's one instance
right.
where, it paid off that
it did.
You were prepared.
Yeah, that was back in February 21.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And that was $1 million hit that we didn't pass on to our customers that we were able to absorb because we planned ahead.
And I would imagine a lot of local governments across the United States were not in that position. And
that's true.
You have to pay for it sooner or later.
You do.
Yeah. So the work on East U.S. Highway 136, there were cones up there for quite a while on that entrance to the U-stop, but that's all finished, looks like. And
it is. It's finished. I think the lane striping is in. I think we can thank Mother Nature to having some really good days for that particular business, and looks good.
Yeah. And hopefully that will help them out, because I stop there often, and there's no problem driving around the south side there on Scott Street, but it is pretty convenient to come off the highway there. So.
I think it will help traffic count. I think we're kind of a instant access age.
we don't like inconvenience of any kind, I guess. Is what it is.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. But that is nice that is finally done. And I guess about a year, they'd been in operation about a year or so.
At least, yeah.
I think it was last holiday season.
I think it was last holiday season. So.
Store open, so now they have the double access there. So
that's right.
Kind of nice there. We'll be back to wrap up Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment. We're back to wrap up our Ask the Mayor program today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. Yesterday, the Gage County Board, who has representatives, a couple of representatives on the Beatrice Area Solid Waste Agency Board, supervisors approved the landfill plan. That's a requirement, I understand, under law. Both bodies approved that. And next year is construction. Eventually.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I know that on Monday night we will have a BASWA meeting prior to the city council meeting. Mm-hmm. One of the things to remember is BASWA is a separate agency. It's a co-agency between the city and the county. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll be looking at or maybe even approving bids for the dirt work to begin. And, it depends on the weather. I mean, I think once we approve the bid, if you get some nice weather and the end of December, probably not with Christmas, but January-ish, you might see some movement of dirt out there to start that process.
The bid that involves like the building and the scale equipment and like that, is that later on in the year?
Yes, I think there's two different bids. There's one for the land and building the landfill the way you need to do it, and then the buildings, I think, is a separate bid process. One of the things I think the reason it's separated is, number one, there's not very many people that build landfills from the dirt perspective. Number two, there is a lot of opportunity for people from the building side of it, so we want to give everybody a fair shot at the building side. Yeah.
On the earthwork part of it and the liner and stuff like that, how many bids have you received?
If I'm not mistaken, there's just one.
I see. Okay.
So we'll take a look at that. It's tough to find the people.
Specialized field, I guess.
It is a specialized field. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Then you have to, it's like you said last week, it's not like digging a hole and throwing everything in it. You have to have monitoring. You have to account for methane and things like that. Yep. You have to have liners. You have to have leachate control.
Right.
It's a whole bunch of stuff involved in there.
So. It is. It's a very scientific project. I don't know how many people watch the city council, but we had a young gentleman that did come up and talk about maybe some other alternatives, and one I think was burning the garbage to clean air, which I guess is used several places. I think we got to be real careful though, but what the price of that might be.
Yeah.
Great solution, but might be a little bit out of the reach of the city.
And there are also federal and state regulations you have to abide by.
There is
may
that
not
too.
be the same from one area to another. So
that is right.
Always the red tape you have to deal with.
That's right.
For good reason, though, for environmental reasons and things like that. But
Yep.
a couple other things maybe to just touch on today. Understand there's been kind of a changeover in the school resource officer positions at Beatrice High School, Beatrice Middle School. Longtime resource officer Zach Lauenstein, and I didn't realize this. He'd been at that for 15 years or so. He was honored at the Board of Education meeting
Right.
Monday night. He's kind of going back to road patrol, and Brittany Rue, I think, takes over there. And if I got this right, I hope I do. It's Courtney Brow, is it, at the middle school? I think.
I believe so.
I think Tim Price used to be
I
the
think you're
officer
right.
there.
Right.
So a little bit of changeover, but I suppose that can be good too. People have an interest in that, and
Well, I think it shows for the city of Beatrice and to be a police officer or a law enforcement officer for the city of Beatrice is that you have a number of opportunities that you may or may not have in some of the bigger cities or where you have to specialize only in road. I think, let's face it, the outgoing resource officers have done a fantastic job and built some really good relationships, and I think the replacements will do exactly the same thing. So it is a great program, but it does give officers a little bit of a different perspective. You do it for 15 years, but you're able to go back on the road. You get a little more, change of pace of what you want to do. And so I think there are a number of opportunities in the police force where our patrolmen and our resource officers and our detectives, they all work together and they all have chances to do different things in their job, which also helps keep them interested in everything.
yeah. And I think if I remember right, the resource officer positions kind of had their origin in grant funding to begin with, but then you kind of city funded it, but then you went together with the school, and
Correct.
now you budget share that, so you've been able to keep those programs going.
That is
sometimes.
correct.
So,
Yes.
as can be, sometimes grants dry up. They come up for a while and then they go away, and
They
then
do.
you have to find another way to do that. Do you foresee that program continuing indefinitely into the future based on the model you have now with the joint funding?
I would think so. Yes. I think we've learned some valuable things. I think it builds some strong relationships with the children and the police department. But I also think, and I'm sure the resource officers could talk about that as well, I think it gives some children that may need some additional help or support somebody that they can talk to. And sometimes just having somebody to listen is an important part of all of our lives. And I think our resource officers have been there as somebody that a young man or a young woman can go talk to about a number of issues that are important, at least in their lives, and at least have someone that is there in their corner. So I think we've learned that not only is it something that we think is there from maybe a law enforcement perspective, I think we've found out over the years it really has become a supportive part of the educational process for our children.
And aside from the safety, security aspect and the good relationships between law officers and students, they've been instrumental in the mini-mart process, too, at both the high school and middle school,
Absolutely.
which some people might say, well, they're there, but that's kind of out of the scope of that position, and they took it a step farther to kind of help out kids and families in that.
I think if you look at the history of our police department, at least for the last 10 or 15 years, they've really done some neat projects for the community that are maybe really technically are outside their support. Mini Mart is one of them because they saw a need because they were there of some children that needed an opportunity to access food in a very good way. And I think, is it today?
Stuff the bus, 10 o'clock.
Stuff the bus,
Take
10
the
o'clock.
toys to the YMCA. Yeah.
And think about that too. Those are projects that they don't have to do.
Yeah.
They feel it's great that they do it, and I'm sure it's very rewarding. And I think we need to be sure to thank our law enforcement for doing really a great service for our community. So, 10 o'clock today, a trip to the YMCA be a great opportunity, and it's a great program.
Yeah.
Because we're all at different levels of being blessed, and this helps fill a hole for someone that unfortunately may not be able to provide as much for that Christmas as other people.
All right. We'll see you at City Council Monday night, Mayor.
All right. Thank you very much, Doug.